She told me, if you can't handle my best friend, then you can't handle me. After he insulted me in front of her family. I didn't entertain it. I left. Later, her siblings revealed disturbing truths about him. Now she's crawling back asking for help. Hey Reddit, figured I'd share a story that got way more insane than I ever expected. Thought I was just dating a great woman. Turns out her best friend since high school had other plans. What started as some weird vibes turned into full-on chaos, and I had to decide if I was going to stick around or walk. Not looking for sympathy, just putting it out there because I know I can't be the only guy who's dealt with something like this. So yeah, I, 37 male, work as a welder. Been doing this trade long enough that I don't need to justify it to anybody. I burn metal together for a living and I make good money doing it. I like the work, it's honest, it's steady, and it pays my bills. I've never been the type to apologize for not having some fancy career where I sit behind a desk all day pretending to be important. Anyway, about 14 months ago, I started dating Kendall, 34, male, works as a dental hygienist, and at first I thought I hit the jackpot. She's smart, funny, takes care of herself, and she's actually good with money. Pays her share of bills and rent. We clicked right away, and after the first couple months, we were already talking about maybe moving in together. I don't rush into stuff like that, been burned before, but I wasn't against it either. Now here's where things start getting sketchy. Enter Landon. Landon is 36 and has apparently been glued to Kendall's life since high school. They dated for like 5 minutes when they were teenagers, but for some reason he never left. He helped her through her divorce from her first marriage, and he's basically been this shadow hovering in the corner of her life for 2 decades. From day one, I didn't like the vibe. Not in a jealous, insecure way. I've had girlfriends with guy friends before, no problem. But there's something off about a man in his mid-30s still orbiting around his high school fling like a lost planet. I told Kendall straight up early on, I'm not cool with this. I wasn't rude, but I didn't dance around it either. I said, listen, I'm not going to be the guy sitting here pretending this is normal. She brushed me off with the classic line, he's like family, and I laughed in her face. Family doesn't show up unannounced and eat half your groceries, Kendall. That's called freeloading. She didn't like that one. But whatever. I wasn't going to bite my tongue just to keep things peaceful. Fast forward a couple months, and we planned this weekend trip to a cabin by the lake. I was looking forward to it, because honestly, welding is exhausting, and I don't take vacations often. Thought it'd be nice to just get away with her. No distractions. Maybe even talk more seriously about us getting more serious. We pack up, head out there Friday evening, grill some food, and for about 2 hours, I'm actually relaxed. Then guess who rolls up Saturday morning with his sad puppy act? Yep, Landon. Apparently, Kendall had mentioned the trip in passing earlier in the week, and of course he filed it away. Said he was having a bad day, and thought driving 2 hours to crash our weekend was the best solution. And of course, Kendall just melts. Oh, you poor thing. Come stay with us. We've got room. So now I'm watching her drag a sleeping bag out for him, rearranging stuff in the cabin like this was his weekend too. I couldn't help myself. I looked at him and said, damn, Landon, you got a radar for when Kendall's having fun without you? Or do you just sniff it out like a bloodhound? He gave me that fake laugh people do when they're mad, but don't want to show it. Kendall shot me a look like please don't start. But I wasn't going to sit there and act like this wasn't insane. The rest of the day was basically Landon throwing his little pity party, whining about his ex like Kendall was his therapist. He tried dragging her into these deep conversations by the lake, but I wasn't about to sit there quietly playing third wheel. I cut him off more than once with lines like, man, she's not your shrink. Maybe you should start paying her hourly. When he tried to rope her into another heart-to-heart, I grabbed the cooler and said, nah, Kendall, you don't need to babysit him. Come help me with the boat. Let him journal it out or something. I made sure he knew he wasn't the main character here. I grilled the food, I ran the boat, and when he sulked, I didn't care. I wasn't about to let some washed-up high school flame turn my weekend into his therapy retreat. By the time we packed up, it was obvious. This wasn't cute best friend stuff. It was unhealthy, straight up. Kendall wasn't just close to him. She was bending over backwards like he owned a share in her life. And I wasn't signing up for that. On the drive home, I wasn't sitting there sulking. I was just thinking, yeah, this crap's not gonna fly. Either she wakes up to it, or I'll walk. I don't compete with clowns. That thought was still rattling around in my head a couple weeks later, when Kendall told me she wanted to host Christmas at her place. She said it would just be her siblings, a few cousins, me, and, of course, Landon. I almost laughed when she slipped his name in there like it was no big deal. Like, oh yeah, it'll be cozy. Just family, and also this 36-year-old man-child who treats my apartment like his second home. I figured fine, whatever. If I was gonna be serious with Kendall, I might as well see how her family felt about me. And honestly, I was curious how they treated Landon. Did they think it was normal too? Or were they just used to him hovering? So Christmas Eve rolls around. I walk in with a bag of groceries, and guess who's already there? Yep, Landon. Not only there, but in the kitchen wearing a dumb Christmas apron, stirring mashed potatoes like he owned the place. I froze for half a second, then laughed. Damn, Kendall. Didn't realize I was late to Landon's Christmas party? Her brother snorted behind me, trying not to laugh, and even Kendall gave me a half smile before muttering, stop. Landon just glared like I kicked his puppy. Anyway, family trickles in, everyone's chatting, opening bottles of soda, that sort of thing. For a while, it's fine. Her sister Eleanor and I get along, and her brothers seem like solid guys. I could tell they were watching though, like they were waiting for the inevitable Landon meltdown. Dinner goes smooth enough. After, we're sitting around the table, and I mention a big welding job I finished the week before. It was a new section of piping for a processing plant. Long hours, tough work, but good money. I wasn't bragging, just making conversation. That's when Landon pounced. He leans back in his chair with that smug look and says, "Yeah, must be real tough burning metal all day. Some of us have actual careers." The whole room went silent, like somebody hit pause on the TV. I just stared at him for a second, then smirked. "You're right, Landon. Some of us do have real careers. Mine keeps the lights on in places you probably can't even spell. Yours is what again? Full-time potato salad taster?" Her cousin nearly choked on his drink. One of her brothers coughed into his napkin. Landon's face turned red, but he tried to play it cool. "I just meant, welding isn't exactly prestigious." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, you're right again. Nothing prestigious about building the bridges you drive on, the buildings you sit in, or the pipelines that heat your precious apartment. But hey, somebody's got to keep your little world from falling apart while you sit around critiquing it, right?" He opened his mouth, but I didn't give him the chance. "See, the difference between me and you, Landon, is I don't have to justify myself at a dinner table. My work shows up in the real world. You just show up with flowers and sob stories. Forgive me if I don't bow down." The table went dead quiet except for Eleanor muttering, "Finally." Landon looked like he swallowed a lemon. Then he snapped, "You're an idiot. Everyone here knows Kendall only puts up with you because she's too polite to say you're out of your league." I leaned forward, elbows on the table, and grinned at him. "Funny, because the only person who seems desperate here is you. Tell me, Landon, how's it feel watching another man sit at the head of the table while you're stuck playing sidekick?" Kendall's jaw dropped. Her brothers were wide-eyed but clearly entertained. Eleanor had this little smile like she'd been waiting years for someone to say it. That's when Landon tried to drag Kendall in. He turned to her and said, Tell him he's embarrassing himself." Kendall looked panicked, like a deer in headlights. Instead of defending me, she went straight into damage control mode, patting Landon's arm like he was a toddler having a tantrum. "Landon, calm down. Let's not do this." Which only made me laugh harder. Wow, this is wild. Guy calls me an idiot, trashes my work, and I'm the one embarrassing myself? Unreal. Landon shoved his chair back and stormed into the kitchen, muttering under his breath. Everyone just sat there awkwardly, until one of her cousins finally said he had to get going. The rest of the night was a blur. People trickled out. The mood was wrecked. I stayed to help clean up, but the second her brothers left, Kendall lit into me. "You embarrassed Landon in front of my family. You need to apologize." I actually laughed in her face. "Apologize? To him? He disrespected me, Kendall. If you think I'm gonna bend the knee to your emotional support parasite, you've lost it." She crossed her arms, dead serious. "Landon's been in my life for 17 years. He's not going anywhere. If you can't accept that, then maybe we're done." I just stared at her for a second, then grabbed my jacket. "Guess we're done then. I don't compete with clowns, remember?" She followed me out to my truck, asking where I was going, but I didn't even answer. I just got in, turned the key, and drove off. Didn't even bother looking in the rear view. The way I saw it, if Kendall was willing to toss me out over that clown, then fine. She could have him. The first half of the drive was quiet, just me and the road. Then my phone started lighting up like it owed money. Text after text. Call after call. I let it buzz in the cup holder. If I'd answered, it would have been the same script. "You're immature. You embarrassed Landon. You need to fix this." By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had about 20 unread messages. I didn't read them. Sometimes silence is the best reply, and I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of a fight. The next morning, I finally scrolled through the texts. Just as I expected, paragraphs of her tearing into me, calling me disrespectful, saying I'd ruined Christmas. My personal favorite, "You're just jealous of Landon." I actually laughed at that one, out loud. Jealous of a guy who still inserts himself into his high school crush's life like a stray cat that never left? Yeah, okay. I tossed the phone aside. I wasn't going to waste energy arguing. If she wanted to keep babysitting a grown man, that was her circus. I wasn't signing up as an act in the show. For 3 days, I ignored her. Calls, texts, all of it. They shifted from angry rants to desperate pleas. First it was, "You owe Landon an apology." Then it turned into, "You're being immature, just talk to me." By the third day, she was sending stuff like, "I miss you. Please don't do this." Didn't matter. I'd made up my mind. If she couldn't see the problem, I wasn't about to blindfold myself just to match her. That's when Eleanor called. At first, I thought about letting it go to voicemail, but she texted right after. "Please pick up. It's about Kendall and Landon." So I answered. Eleanor didn't waste time. "I just want to say, I saw what happened at Christmas, and I think you were right." That caught me off guard. Most people in that family looked uncomfortable but stayed quiet. Hearing one of them say it straight out was surprising. She went on. "Landon's been like this forever. You're not crazy. Every guy Kendall's ever dated has dealt with the same thing. Some just bailed early, some stuck around too long, but it always ends the same." I leaned back in my chair, listening. "Go on," Eleanor sighed. "Her ex-husband, Timothy, you know why that marriage fell apart? Landon. He was constantly around, crying about his problems, sabotaging things. Timothy finally asked Kendall to set boundaries, and she called him controlling. You know who put that idea in her head? Landon." I just shook my head. Figures. She kept going. "One time, Timothy confided in Kendall about his job stress. Landon somehow found out and twisted it into, Timothy can't handle providing for you. Caused a massive fight between them. And the kicker? Landon was the one feeding Timothy misinformation too. Stuff Kendall told him in confidence." I whistled low. So basically, he was playing both sides and blowing up the relationship from inside. Exactly, Eleanor said. And it's not just Timothy. Her boyfriends before him, same deal. If they went on a trip, Landon would magically have some emergency to pull her back. If they started getting serious, he'd pick fights with them until they broke. I laughed dryly. Sounds like the guy should put professional homewrecker on his resume. Eleanor didn't laugh, but I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. We've all tried talking to her. Me, her brothers, even our parents, but she always defends him. It's like he has some hold on her. That's why I called. You stood up to him in front of everyone. Nobody's ever done that before. I stayed quiet for a second, letting that sink in. Nobody? Not one guy in nearly 2 decades had checked him? No wonder he acted like he owned the place. Eleanor added, I don't know what you're planning, but I hope you don't just walk away. Kendall needs to wake up, and maybe you're the one who can make her see it. I let out a short laugh. Eleanor, look, I appreciate you telling me all this. Really. But here's the thing. I'm not here to play savior. I'm not going to wrestle with some delusional man-child for my girlfriend's attention. If Kendall wants me, she knows where I'm at. But if she wants him, she can have him. She was quiet for a beat. Then she said softly, fair enough. Just don't let him make you feel crazy. He's been pulling the same routine for years. We hung up, and I sat there staring at the ceiling for a while. Everything Eleanor told me made sense now. Landon wasn't just a bad friend. He was a parasite. Every time Kendall got close to someone, he'd drain the life out of it until she was back at square one, alone except for him. And she couldn't even see it. That was the part that stung. Not Landon himself. Guys like him don't bother me. Delusional, entitled, puffed up egos always collapse under their own weight eventually. What stung was Kendall choosing to ignore reality. Watching her comfort him at Christmas while he insulted me, that told me everything I needed to know about where I ranked in her life. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to chase. I wasn't going to explain myself again. If Kendall wanted to keep babysitting her overgrown high school crush, that was on her. But if she ever woke up and realized what was happening, that would have to come from her, not me. And for a while, I stuck to that. I went to work, did my hours at the shop, came home, ate my meals in peace. No drama, no constant buzzing phone, no grown man barging into my weekends with his emotional baggage. Honestly, it felt good. Quiet. But Kendall? She was still stuck in the same loop. I wasn't talking to her, but people talk. Her sister Eleanor texted me updates here and there. And sure enough, Landon didn't waste any time turning the drama dial up to 11. First stunt, showing up at Kendall's office with flowers and coffee like he was her boyfriend. Eleanor said Kendall's co-workers were whispering about it in the break room. One even asked her, so are you dating him or the welder guy? Apparently Kendall laughed it off, but I know that had to sting. She worked hard to keep her professional life separate, and now she had this clown parading in like he was Prince Charming. Second stunt, the texting. Eleanor told me he was sending Kendall walls of messages all day. Stuff like, I can't believe you're choosing someone over me after all these years, and if you don't answer, I'll know you're throwing me away like everyone else. Classic manipulative garbage. Third stunt, he started dropping by her place, uninvited even more than usual. Only now, he wasn't even pretending it was casual. He'd stand outside her door, buzzing her nonstop, or hang out in the parking lot waiting for her to come home. One of her neighbors asked if she was okay because they'd seen a guy pacing around out front late at night. And the worst part? Kendall was still defending him. Eleanor said she kept saying stuff like, he's just going through a rough time, or he doesn't mean it like that. That's when I knew she hadn't hit her breaking point yet. She was still blind, still trying to manage his moods instead of facing reality. But Landon, he wasn't slowing down. One night, about 3 weeks after Christmas, my phone buzzed around 11:30 p.m. I almost ignored it. I'd been dozing off watching some dumb TV rerun. But I glanced down and saw Kendall's name. Normally, I'd have let it ring out. But then I noticed she called again. And again. 3 back-to-back calls at nearly midnight. That was different. I answered. What? Her voice came through shaky, panicked. He's here. Landon's outside my building. He's banging on the door. He won't leave. I sat up straight. In the background, I could hear it. Muffled thuds and a man's voice yelling. Couldn't make out every word, but the tone was clear. Unhinged. I kept my voice flat. This is exactly what I warned you about, Kendall. This is your loyal best friend in action. She started crying. I don't know what to do. He's screaming that I betrayed him. He's yelling my neighbors are looking out the windows. I cut her off. Stop. You know what to do. Call the cops. Right now. I don't want him to get in trouble. He's just... I snapped. Kendall. He's a grown man, not a toddler. He's not throwing a tantrum in a grocery aisle. He's pounding on your door in the middle of the night. If you don't call the police, you're telling him this is okay. And guess what? Next time it'll be worse. She went silent for a beat. In the background, I heard Landon bellow something about her owing him loyalty. My blood boiled. I softened my voice just enough to cut through her panic. Listen to me. You're in danger. Call the cops. Let them handle it. Finally, she whispered. Okay. I stayed on the line while she dialed. Within 10 minutes, I heard sirens faintly over the phone. More yelling, more pounding, then muffled commotion as the cops dragged him off. When it was quiet again, Kendall came back on the line, voice small. They took him. They said he'll spend the night in holding. I leaned back in my chair, exhausted but not surprised. Good. Maybe he'll finally get the message. She sniffled. I'm sorry. I should have listened to you. I didn't let her off easy. You think? I told you this wasn't normal. I told you he wasn't just a best friend. But you chose to ignore it. You made me the bad guy for standing up for myself. She didn't argue this time. She just whispered, "You're right. It was stupid. I've enabled him." For the first time since all this started, she actually sounded like she believed it. And that was the difference. Before, she defended him. Before, she brushed off the red flags. But now, she was the one calling me in tears because the man she swore was like family was pounding on her door like a lunatic. That was her wake-up call. Not me, not her siblings, not even Eleanor. It had to be Landon showing his true colors in the ugliest way possible. I hung up that night knowing one thing. Kendall wasn't the same anymore. The blind loyalty had cracked. She couldn't unsee what happened. And as much as I wanted to stay cold, a part of me also knew. If she was finally waking up, things were about to get real interesting. The next morning, Kendall called me again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. This time she wasn't frantic. She was quiet, drained. "You were right," she said, voice hoarse. "I can't believe I defended him all those times." I didn't sugarcoat it. "Yeah, you backed him while he disrespected me. I told you he wasn't just your friend. He was obsessed. You didn't want to hear it." She didn't argue. That alone shocked me. Instead, she said, "I want to fix this. Not just with you, with myself. I'm filing for a restraining order today." I raised my eyebrows even though she couldn't see me. That wasn't the Kendall I knew 2 weeks ago. "Good. About time you stopped babysitting him and started protecting yourself." Later that week, I went with her to court. I didn't sit at the table. This was her fight. But I was there in the back row watching Landon stroll in like he owned the place. He even wore a suit, all smug, like he was about to give a TED Talk on being a professional victim. His lawyer looked like the type who'd defend parking tickets and DUIs, clearly out of his depth, but trying hard. When the judge asked Kendall to speak, she laid it all out. The late-night pounding on her door, the manipulative texts, the office visits, everything. She even had screenshots printed out in a folder, organized by date. I've got to admit, I was impressed. This was the same woman who once told me, "Landon doesn't mean it that way." Now she was standing in front of a judge showing receipts. Landon's lawyer tried spinning it, saying I'd isolated her and manipulated her into turning against a lifelong friend. The judge looked at him like he'd just farted in church. Then Kendall's co-workers testified via Zoom. They talked about Landon showing up at lunch, calling her nonstop, acting like he was her boyfriend. That pretty much buried whatever defense he had left. The judge didn't hesitate. Full restraining order for a year, 500 feet minimum, no contact. Landon's jaw dropped like he couldn't believe someone finally told him no. After court, I expected Kendall to collapse into tears. Instead, she walked out with her head higher than I'd ever seen it. She looked at me and said, "That felt good." But of course, Landon wasn't done. The restraining order just meant he had to get creative. A week later, Kendall's phone blew up with friends messaging her. "Hey, did you see what Landon posted?" Turns out he'd made burner accounts on social media and was blasting out garbage about her. Stuff like, she cheated on Timothy with the welder guy. That's why the marriage failed, and she's using him for money and will dump him when she's done. The posts were pathetic, but people saw them, even patients at the dental office. Her boss had to pull her aside like, "What's going on here?" Luckily, the clinic believed her after she explained, but it was humiliating. Then Landon leveled up the smear campaign. He called Kendall's parents, who live across the country and don't touch social media, and spun his sob story. Kendall's being manipulated. She's isolating herself. I'm worried for her. Naturally, her mom freaked out and called her crying. Kendall had to sit them down on FaceTime and explain everything. By the end, her parents sounded stunned. Her mom even admitted, "I always wondered why your relationships never lasted. I thought it was just you. I didn't realize it was him." Still, the worst hit came when Landon dragged Timothy back into the mess. One night, Kendall's phone rang, and it was her ex-husband. He was ticked off, asking why she was bad-mouthing him years after the divorce. She was confused until Timothy said, "Landon told me you've been blaming me for everything." That's when it all unraveled. Timothy finally admitted he'd always suspected Landon was behind their problems. He said, "Looking back, it makes sense. The weird fights, the way you always defended him, the stuff I knew I never told anyone except you, but somehow Landon knew too. He was sabotaging us, wasn't he?" Kendall broke down. Not because Timothy yelled. He wasn't even angry at her anymore. He sounded relieved, honestly, like pieces finally clicked together. He told her about the night Landon accidentally let slip some private info Kendall had confided, how that betrayal spiraled into their separation. By the end of the call, Timothy said something I didn't expect. "I don't hate you, Kendall. I hate him. He stole years of our lives, and you didn't see it." After she hung up, Kendall sat there on my couch staring at the wall. "He ruined my marriage. He's been controlling me my entire adult life, hasn't he?" I didn't gloat. I could have said "told you so," but it wasn't the time. Instead, I leaned back and said, "Yeah, and you let him. But the fact you see it now, that's the first step." For once, she didn't snap back or get defensive. She just nodded, quiet, processing everything. That night was the turning point. Kendall wasn't ignorant anymore. She wasn't bending over backwards to excuse Landon. She was finally pissed. Pissed at herself for letting him run her life. Pissed at him for poisoning everything she touched. And me? I saw the shift. This wasn't the same woman who told me to apologize at Christmas. This was someone finally waking up, ready to fight for herself. And when Kendall decided she was done playing babysitter, Landon started unraveling faster than I expected. The first violation came quick. 2 weeks after the restraining order, which banned direct or indirect contact, Kendall's dental office got a call. The receptionist answered, and the guy on the other end pretended to be a new patient asking about cleanings. Except he wasn't asking about cleanings. He was asking which days Kendall worked. The receptionist recognized his voice. She'd seen him hanging around the clinic before trying to bump into her. She hung up immediately and called Kendall. Kendall didn't hesitate. She filed the report the same day. Landon got arrested again, and this time the judge wasn't lenient. 30 days in county jail plus probation. Watching him get let out in cuffs was probably the first time in years Kendall breathed easy. But Landon wasn't done even behind bars. Inmates get limited phone and email access, and he used it to full effect. Through recorded jail calls and messages relayed by buddies on the outside, he still found ways to stir things up. Eleanor showed Kendall screenshots of her old college roommate getting a message that clearly came from him, asking if she still had Kendall's address. Her cousin got a Facebook DM from one of his friends parroting Landon's usual lies that Kendall was trapped in some abusive relationship. He even tried sniffing around her landlord the same way. Technically, it didn't violate the restraining order since it wasn't direct contact, but everyone knew exactly whose fingerprints were on it. Kendall looked at me one night, shaking her head. He's obsessed. He's trying to build a map of my entire life. I shrugged. That's what parasites do. They latch on until you starve them out. When Landon finally got out of jail, there was a quiet stretch, maybe 3 weeks. I thought maybe he'd finally realized it wasn't worth it. But no, a guy that delusional doesn't just stop. One afternoon, Kendall walked out of work to find all 4 of her tires slashed. At first, she thought maybe it was just bad luck, until her neighbor pulled her aside that evening. They swore they'd seen a car that looked exactly like Landon's parked across the street the night before. No cameras caught him in the act, so technically there wasn't proof, but the timing lined up a little too perfectly. Nobody believed it was random. That night, I went to her apartment and installed a security camera above her parking spot, plus another by her door. Motion alerts. Everything backed up to the cloud. If he so much as sneezed near her car, we'd have proof. But even with the cameras, Kendall was restless. Every time her phone buzzed, every time headlights passed her window at night, she tensed. This wasn't just harassment anymore, it was wearing her down. That's when she did something I didn't expect. She said, "I'm done letting him dictate how I live. I'm moving." At first, I thought she meant just a new apartment, but she'd gone bigger. She'd been interviewing quietly and landed a new job across town. Better pay, shorter hours, and in a part of the city Landon had no ties to. She took the offer, signed the lease on a new place, and gave her landlord notice, all in 1 week. I remember her standing in the middle of her half-packed living room, looking around at the boxes. He doesn't get to know where I sleep, where I park, or where I work. He doesn't get a map anymore. That was the first time she smiled in weeks, and it wasn't forced. It was freedom. She changed her phone number too, deleted her old social media accounts, scrubbed everything. She made a new private Instagram under a fake name just to keep in touch with close family, but otherwise, gone. Landon could scream into the void all he wanted. He had no way to reach her. The night she moved into the new place, I hauled boxes with her. When we dropped the last one on the floor, she looked at me and said, "Stay." Not as a question, more like a decision she'd already made. Her lease was up anyway. Mine was month to month, and truth be told, I was already spending most nights at her place. It made sense, so I did. We set up cameras around the new apartment. I welded a custom lock bar for her sliding door, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked steady. And me? I could see the change. She didn't ask permission for every decision anymore. She didn't apologize every 5 seconds for things she hadn't even done. She didn't rush to keep the peace whenever there was tension. Kendall 2.0 was stronger, smarter, independent. I told her one night, "You're finally done with your patient." She laughed. "What patient?" I smirked. "The one who never sent you a bill. Just ruined your life for free." She rolled her eyes but didn't argue, because she knew I was right. It hit me then. This wasn't the same woman who begged me to apologize at Christmas. This was someone who'd been tested, cornered, and finally clawed her way out. She didn't need me to rescue her anymore. She needed me to stand beside her, and I was more than fine with that. Landon? He was still out there somewhere, sure, probably plotting his next sad attempt. But for the first time, Kendall didn't care. She wasn't scared. She wasn't glued to her phone waiting for his approval. She was building a life without him in it, and that was the real victory. The weeks after the move were quiet in a way I wasn't used to. No random calls in the middle of the night. No constant buzzing from Kendall's phone. Her family noticed it too. Eleanor came over to see the new place and said, "You seem lighter." Kendall didn't say much, just smiled, but you could see it in her face. She wasn't carrying him anymore. Her brothers picked up on it as well. Before, when Landon was around, they'd give her looks like they were waiting for him to blow up again. Now, those looks were gone. They stayed longer at family dinners, actually hung out instead of making excuses to leave early. Even her parents, who used to think Landon was just a helpful old friend, finally admitted they'd been fooled. They called Kendall one night, both of them on speakerphone, apologizing for believing his version of things when he called them crying. Her mom even said, "I always wondered why none of your relationships worked. I thought it was you being too picky. I didn't realize it was him." Hearing that seemed to close a loop for Kendall. She wasn't defensive anymore. She was just done. Kendall also started reaching back out to old friends. Some admitted straight up that they'd stopped inviting her places years ago because Landon always tagged along and made everything awkward. "It was like hanging out with you meant dealing with him too," one of them told her. Kendall told them, without hesitation, "He's not in my life anymore." That one sentence rebuilt friendships she thought were gone for good. Meanwhile, for me, things felt normal. That might sound boring, But after months of chaos, normal was perfect. We weren't looking over our shoulders or bracing for the next stunt. Our fights were the kind every couple has. Stuff like whose turn it was to buy groceries, what we were ordering for dinner, whether to start a new show or finish the one we already had. That's the kind of relationship stuff you're supposed to deal with. Not, is your best friend stalking you today? Of course, Landon couldn't resist one last attempt. About 2 months after the restraining order was granted, Kendall's old office called her. A letter had shown up with her name on it. No return address, but they figured it out. It was from him. They asked if she wanted them to hold it. She didn't even blink. Throw it out. When she told me later, I laughed. Guy's been crying since high school. Guess he's keeping the streak alive. She actually smiled. And the important part? She didn't look sad. She didn't look conflicted. She wasn't wondering if she should give him another chance, or if she'd been too harsh. She was just done. That told me everything I needed to know. Looking back, I realized I'd played it right. I never begged her to pick me. I never made it some competition between me and him. I told her the truth, I stood my ground, and when she made her choice at Christmas, I walked. That's what made the difference. If I'd folded, she never would have seen it clearly. She had to wake up on her own, and she did. Now, life is steady. We go to work, we come home, we figure out what to eat, we argue about dumb little things like whose turn it is to take the trash out. That's all I ever wanted. Peace. No freeloaders, no grown man inserting himself like he owned a piece of our relationship. Just us. As for Landon, I don't really care where he is anymore. Eleanor says she's seen him around town looking rough, but Kendall told her not to give updates. She doesn't need to know. She doesn't owe him space in her head anymore. And she's right. In the end, Kendall proved something important. When it came down to it, she chose to stand up for herself. She stopped defending him, stopped making excuses, and cut him off for good. Not everyone has the guts to do that, especially when it's someone who's been glued to their life for nearly 2 decades. So yeah, it cost her someone she thought was family, but she gained a real relationship. And I gained a partner who finally saw her own worth. No more circus, no more clown, just normal life, exactly how I wanted it.